our webinar today. We are today presenting some thoughts on how to transform your marketing data into actionable buyer personas. So it's a webinar brought to you by Salesfusion and InsideView together, and we're excited to host John Donlin from Serious Decisions. So I'll introduce him in just a second, but just a little bit of housekeeping first. We're eager to see and answer any questions you have at the end of the webinar, so we'll save a little bit of time for Q&A. So feel free to add any questions that may come up during the presentation to the GoToWebinar interface. And if we don't get to them at the end for any reason, we'll be sure to follow up and answer questions by email or phone. So with that, I'll introduce John Donlin, who is Research Director for Marketing Operations Strategies, for the Marketing Operations Strategies practice at Serious Decisions. And if you're not already familiar with Serious Decisions, they're a research advisory firm focused on delivering operational intelligence to sales, marketing, and product leaders in the B2B space, and they're a partner of InsideView and Salesfusion. So with that, I will turn it over to John. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Lynn, and hi, everybody. I am excited to be here on this webcast. I'm excited to share the content that we've got for you around personas and operationalizing personas. And then, as Lynn mentioned, we're going to have some time at the end for some Q&A, so I'll look forward to that. And then in between, the folks at Salesfusion and InsideView have got some content that they wanted to share as well. So let's get into it here. So, you know, it's funny, I was driving into work this morning, and I was thinking about this webcast, and I was thinking about this slide in particular in the webcast. And here we are about a week and a half away from Christmas, and I was thinking to myself, do I have the wife persona nailed, or am I a little bit off this year? I started thinking about the gifts that I got, and I started thinking, oh man, is this going to be a cookies year, or is this going to be a crackers year? And I started doubting myself, thinking, well, when did I create that persona? Have I refreshed that persona lately? Do I have all the info I need? Fortunately, we've got some small kids, so the focus is on them at Christmas, not so much on what parents get each other. So, so that's the good news. But enough about my Christmas shopping anxiety. We're here to talk about personas, so let's keep on cracking with that. The idea is that you know, personas are really important, and I probably don't have to sell this audience too hard on why personas are important. You know, we've done a lot of research in this area. Bottom line is, you know, having good personas built out and really integrating that into the messaging that you're doing with your marketing activities, you know, best in class, that can double what you're doing in terms of your pipeline. So it can really have a significant effect. You know, obviously, it gives you an opportunity to engage your buyers earlier and more effectively. You're speaking to them in lexicon and in terms that they understand and that resonates with them. One of the underplayed aspects of personas is not just the ability for you to be able to connect with your target audience that much better, but internally for the folks in marketing and sales and product to all be on the same page in terms of who that targeted buyer is and what it is that they care about. Obviously, there's sales productivity that comes into play, like I talked about. And you know, another interesting aspect of this, I think, is that it really helps the marketers become experts, subject matter experts in the people that they're targeting. And you know, if sales is kind of a one-to-one relationship where you know, you're working with people on an individual basis, maybe field marketing is a little bit removed from that, but maybe it's one to few. The demand center kind of marketing is one to many, and there's the opportunity there to kind of fall out of touch with who that end buyer is. And so personas are a great way of bringing all that home and really making the buyer that you're reaching out to real. So if, you know, again, we talk to our clients all the time about personas and how to build them out and how to operationalize them. Just a couple of proof points in terms of how they can really lead to being a lot more effective, more efficient with some of the things you're doing from a marketing perspective. So first example, product launch, great top of funnel results here. So software company, large software company, and they drew almost a third greater in their campaign response rate, which is amazing. And even more amazing, the sales folks said, hey, these leads are great. Wouldn't that be nice to hear if you're sitting in marketing, that the leads that you're passing over to sales are that much higher quality because you're able to identify exactly who those people were that you're targeting. Another example, this is more along pipeline acceleration. So again, kind of a software example. This is a large company. The business unit itself is over $1 billion, and this one's all about velocity. So having better personas, where enabled that messaging, enabled the sales enablement materials to shorten the sales cycle by 2 to 3 months, which is significant. A lot of us are in a complex B2B sale. It's multi-month, sometimes over a year for the sale, but to be able to reduce that by 2 or 3 months is pretty incredible. And the other comment there too is one of the data points that we've got is that 60 to 70% of content goes unused, which is just incredibly wasteful. I think a lot of organizations are, the world has kind of turned on its head in the last few years, and it's all inbound, it's all content, so let's just produce volumes and quantities of content. And it's really about producing quality content. And so the more, again, that you can understand who your persona is, what their pains are, how to speak to them, you can be a lot more targeted with the content that you produce and drive much better results. And then the last one's a nurture example. So this one was over in EMEA, driving a lot more downloads and for their content, and a pretty significant increase in the marketing influence revenue that they drove as well. So I think we're all probably on board that personas are good. They're a good thing. But now, how do we start to operationalize the use of some of them? So one construct that you can use is what we call the audience framework, and this is a way of breaking down your targeted audiences from really starting from kind of a macro level and starting to drill down all the way into the personas that you're going to care about. And this is a great exercise to do, on the during the annual planning process. You can do it anytime during the year. But the idea is you start off with, at the highest level, the master brand that you've got, and this can be, this can be for the whole company. It can be for a business unit. It can be within a product or solution line. But say you start off with a brand of, say, FedEx. So that's kind of the master brand, and then you've got some sub-brands in there that you might care about. Maybe it's FedEx Ground, Freight, Express. Kinko's might be in there. And so you can break it down into the different sub-brands that you care about, and then look at the different industries that you'd be targeting. So let's take healthcare, for example. So, okay, so we're going to target healthcare. That's a priority segment for us. Maybe it's healthcare in North America as opposed to EMEA or APAC. And then when you look in the sub-vertical, you can say, all right, well, healthcare is a pretty big space. There's actually some complexity to that. So what are we looking at there? We're looking at hospitals, or we're looking at doctors' offices. What are the insurance? What are we looking at in terms of the different sub-verticals? And you can drive that down further and further to get to persona. So organization type. So now you're looking at all other kinds of segmentation variables that you might care about. You might want to look at innovative companies. So what are companies doing that are spending a lot in research and development, for example? So maybe that's the organization type that you care about. And then ultimately you're kind of boiling that down to the buying center, which is sort of roughly equivalent with the department that you're targeting. So maybe that's IT or HR, that sort of thing. And then within that buying center, now we've got people. Now we're down to the real people that we care about, the personas. And of course, within a buying center, there can be multiple personas that you would interact with. So you might have user personas, buyer personas. You might have ratifiers, that sort of thing. So potentially there are a lot of different people that get involved in that complex B2B sale. So this is something that typically portfolio marketing would own, and they would do this, like I said, on an annual planning basis as part of the annual planning process. If not portfolio marketing, you might have campaign operations or content operations. They potentially could be responsible for going through this exercise. But it's a really useful construct to help you break out and prioritize the different audiences that you potentially could target. So once you've got the set of personas down that you care about, now the idea is, all right, we've got these personas. Let's take any one given persona. Now, what are the attributes of the persona? What are the different aspects of that persona that we need to capture? And so this is our persona framework, and it's a great way of being able to categorize and capture the different things about personas that you might care about. So with the functional attributes, these are a lot of your demographic and firmographic information, pieces of information. So you've got, who they are, what their title is, where they fall in the org chart, where they fit in terms of the buying center, that sort of thing, what the company demographics look like. And then you start to drill down, beyond that into what their interests are. So now you've got, what initiatives are they chasing this year? What are their challenges? What are their pains? How do they speak? What are some of the key words that they use when they talk about their industry and their problems? Then you can look at things like buying behavior. So what does the buyer's journey look like for these personas? What are some of the inflection points that they go through as they step through the buyer's journey, as they're doing research, as they're coming to a conclusion on a solution, that sort of thing. And what's their role? So we talked before about personas. There can be multiple people that get involved in the sale. Which persona is this? Let's identify what their role is in the buying process. And then finally, let's take a look at what their interaction preferences are. So we want to capture, what kind of content do they like to consume? How do they like to consume it? Where are their watering holes? What are the associations they belong to? Where do they go? So that we can know to go there and influence them, where they typically are. Okay? So I want to drill into just a couple of these as an example of how you might start to break out and understand some of the detail behind this. So here's our buyer's journey, our buying cycle framework, and it starts with 3 kind of macro phases. You've got education, solution, and selection. So at first, people are trying to understand what the possibilities are out there in the marketplace. They're trying to, maybe they have a solution in place and they're trying to understand if they need a better solution for what they already have, or they're being introduced to the idea that there could be a solution for pain they didn't even know that they had. At some point, they're exploring the different solutions, and they're committing to one of those solutions. And then towards the end, they're getting budgetary approval for it, and they're actually making the purchase. And so you've got these kind of macro steps that people go through, and you can break it down into the smaller steps as well. So the idea is understand what your persona's buyer's journey is, and map that out, and understand the different steps that they go through, and what their changes in in attitude are throughout each of these, so that you can affect them and drive them from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, etc. Another thing you can take a look at is start to break down what their content preferences are. So this is just an example of how you might start to map that out. So we've got, we're taking a look at chief operating officers here. We've got 10 different examples. Here are those 6 stages of the buyer's journey that you could potentially look at. And it's important to try and understand which pieces of content they prefer at which stage. And to the extent that you can identify where those personas are at any given point in time in the buyer's journey, then you can serve up those pieces of content. Sometimes, frankly, that's easier said than done. And so just understanding in general the types of pieces of content that they look at can be useful as well. So you can look at what a COO cares about in general throughout the journey. You could also summarize things for any given column. So you could say, okay, when early on in the process, what are the types of content that they like to look at, et cetera. And you can do the same sort of thing with tactics. So how do they like to engage? Are they introverts? They'll, they don't want to talk on the phone, but they'll read white papers all day long. Or do they like to come to conferences? Do they like to interact with sales reps? That sort of thing. That changes as they progress through the buyer's journey. So these are all aspects of the persona that you want to start to capture, so that again you can target them more effectively. So those are just a few blowouts of some of those aspects of the persona framework that you can start to capture. And the idea is, at some point, and probably many of you on the call have done this, is you've created personas. You've created one persona, maybe you've created a set. You've got a roadmap for the next few personas that you're going to create. I know this is a little bit tough to read. It's just meant to be representative. But the idea is, we've got these great, shiny, glossy personas. We've got Joe, the IT architect. There he is, right there in the middle. We've got a face to him. We've got a name. We've got kind of a summary of what his issues are. But the idea is, how do we, and this is great, it's great as a messaging tool, but it's really sort of an analog representation of this persona. So how do we go from this analog representation to the digital version? How do we start to operationalize this and make this something that we can use in terms of segmentation, in terms of querying, in terms of understanding their responses when they start interacting with us digitally? How do we go from those nice PowerPoints or posters on the wall to something that we can really use digitally? So it's a matter of a few different things. So in the persona framework, there were a number of attributes that we captured. That firmographic information, the demographic information. There's also a lot of information you want to capture in terms of their interactions and what they're doing live, their digital body language, essentially. And so the idea is you want to be able to map those attributes that you've identified on the PowerPoint slide and create fields out of them. So you need to turn that into structured data. And so this is where marketing ops starts to get involved. And so one of the things that marketing ops can work with portfolio marketing on is matching those persona attributes to database fields. Another thing that you have to look at is where is this data coming from? So a lot of the explicit information, so that demographic, firmographic kind of information, the profile information, a lot of that can be found in the marketing automation platform, the Salesforce administration platform, that sort of thing. And then more of the interaction data, that's going to come from the web platform, it's going to come from the social media platform. And so the idea is you've got to be able to blend all of this information together to get the composite look of a persona. And so, again, from a marketing ops perspective, now it's when you've got if you have a data steward or somebody who's looking out for the data, it's not just a matter of, do we have this data, is it clean, is it quality, but how can we bring this data together? Because I need to look at this in all one place. So you get into questions around the unification strategy. So are we going to sync all our systems together and call maybe our Salesforce administration system the source of the truth? Do we have an enterprise data warehouse where all this stuff can flow into? Do we have a marketing data mart? All those kind of architectural questions are the ones that marketing ops can help solve. But the idea is, at the end of the day, you need to bring this information together so that so that you can get a composite look at the persona. Another aspect of what you'll need to do is to establish governance around what acceptable field values are. So anywhere that you've got categorical information, and title is a great example. So titles can be all over the place. There's sort of no restriction on what a title can be. A lot of times what's helpful is to take title and break that down into level and function. And so level, indicating manager, director, that sort of thing, and then function, HR, IT, operations, that sort of thing. Those have kind of a finite set of values. And so either internally or working with a data vendor, you can start to take title and split that out. And now you've got structured data that you can search by. So that sort of thing. But similarly with some of the squishier stuff. So I mentioned challenges and initiatives. That could be free-form text that somebody's entering in, or that you're capturing, or that a salesperson is capturing one way or another. So you have to make some decisions around how you're going to capture that information and how ultimately you're going to use it. So it may be that through your persona analysis, in terms of challenges, there are 4, 5, 6 challenges that this persona typically faces, and you can put those in a drop-down list. Or a set of radio buttons where you can, or checkboxes where you can check all applicable, that sort of thing. So the idea, again, is we're taking this analog, this unstructured data, and translating it into a structured format that you can use. The other thing about personas, and I talked about bringing this data together. One of the tricky things is that is identifying when somebody is in fact a persona. So when is that person Joe, the IT architect? And it's one of the things that marketing ops can get involved with, and this is really a critical area of operationalizing the personas, is developing what that threshold looks like. So, certainly if you're collecting data about someone a little bit at a time, whether that's anonymous data or you know who that person is, maybe you're doing some progressive profiling on the website through your forms, you may not have a complete picture about them right off the bat. You're probably going to get a little bit of info as time goes on. So you have to decide, when do we know that this is Joe, the IT architect? And so, there's a couple of different ways of physically instantiating this. So you can, once you develop what that threshold is, you can either create another field in the database that is essentially persona, and once that person hits that threshold, then you can fill that in and say, this is Joe, or this is IT architect, whatever the name of your persona is. The other way that we've seen some of our clients do it is by dynamic search. So they won't kind of hard code that value into the database, but instead they'll have a set of criteria that they use that says, well, if we think we know what the person's title is, we think we know what industry they're in, they've done this kind of activity on our site, then okay, now the light checks, and we're going to go and we're going to call this person Joe. And so they don't hard code anything into the database, and they leave it to a dynamic search instead. So there's a couple of different ways of being able to do that. But there's a lot of work that you can do. So this is where portfolio marketing and marketing ops really need to work together in terms of understanding the attributes that are important in identifying the persona and then creating those in a digital format. Okay. So one concept I wanted to share with you as well is trying to take a look at your marketing database and understand which personas and how many of them you might have. So one of the concepts we work with our clients on is to understand the health of their marketing database. And there's a couple of different things here that we can talk about. One is look at the records and evaluate them in terms of their level of completeness. And completeness is subjective. There's no one set of fields or values that are sort of industry standard. It really depends on what you find important to be in order to identify that persona, what other consumers of the data need in order to work with that contact record. But the idea is that you would have different levels of completeness. So on the weekend, not the weekend, but the week end, you've got data that's almost unusable. So maybe you've got an email address in there, but it bounces, or you've got a phone number, but it's a main number. So it's not a direct dial. So those records are essentially unreachable. And then you start moving up the spectrum, and you've got records with, okay, we've got some contact information for them, we've got that phone number, we've got an email, but we don't have a lot of that other persona or segmentable data that we need to be able to, even know if this is a customer versus a prospect, or what industry they're in, or what revenue band their company is in. So yeah, we can reach out to them, but not terribly complete. As you continue to move up, so now you've got records that are fairly complete. So you've got great contact info, you've got information that you can segment by, but maybe there are a few holes in there. And then at the top level, now you've got your gold records. So these are the ones that have full, complete information. You can translate all that analog information into the digital. You've got all those fields filled in. It's accurate, it's complete, it's fresh, that sort of thing. So the idea is, whether you want to use a 4-tier system like we've depicted here, or your own set and your own set of criteria for each of those tiers, that's fine. But the idea is to give some texture to what the database looks like. It's not just sort of binary, do we have that record or not, is it good or is it bad? The other dimension that you want to evaluate the records on, so if completeness was on the y-axis there, then the level of engagement is on the x-axis. So how recently have they engaged with you? And this isn't how recently have you sent them an email, that doesn't count, but how recently have you received a hand raise from them? So our research has shown that 1/4 to 1/3 of a contact database will go stale about every 12 months. So that's why we put breakpoints in here of 12 months and 36 months. The idea being that the ones that are older than 36 months, if you've done nothing, then the whole database has gone bad. So the ones that are older than 36 months, we're calling those inactive. But the ones in 12 to 36 months, now those are a little bit better, and certainly the ones that are more recent, then those are the best ones. And so you put all this together, and the idea is the records that are in the gold and green boxes that you see here on the screen, these are the records that you can count and say, yep, you know what, we've got these as the personas that we care about. We're going to bump that up against our demand needs. So if we need 1 million records, we need to talk to 1 million contacts this year in order to hit our demand goals, I'm going to count the records that are in the gold and green boxes as the ones that are good, usable records. And then the other ones are, the ones in the light blue area, those are great candidates for cleanse and append activities. So all is not lost with those. You can certainly stand to spruce them up either through you might have the missing pieces of information in other systems within your own company, maybe in billing or customer care systems that you might be able to augment, or you can work with a data vendor to fill in the blanks on those. And similarly, even the ones down in the bottom row, those ones that were incomplete, those potentially are candidates for a reinvigoration campaign, or again to work with a data vendor to spruce them up. You have to be careful there on the campaign. You don't want to you don't want to blast those people or hurt your sender score and get into spam traps and that kind of thing. But the idea here is, you've developed the personas, now you've digitized them, now let's take a look at the database and see what the health of our database is and make a plan for cleaning it up and filling in the gaps. Another concept I want to share with you is the idea of measuring all this stuff. So, this is kind of from an ops perspective, but the idea is, we saw some success stories early on, and if it really is important to use personas and they really do help, well, let's measure this stuff. So what I'm showing here is the Serious Decisions metric spectrum, and it starts, oddly enough, it kind of starts at the activity level, which is the base set of things that we're doing as marketers. So we are, we're sending out emails, or we're making phone calls, we're organizing events, that sort of thing. So it's almost a checklist of the different things that we're doing. So we can put, there's a set of metrics that we can measure ourselves by that are activity metrics. But the idea is all those activities are meant to lead to some sort of output. So those outputs are, a great example of some of the output metrics are some of the waterfall metrics that we see. So our conversion rates, the number of leads and opportunities that we're driving, the velocity, that sort of thing. So again, the activities lead to output, and then those outputs are there because hopefully they're going to have some kind of impact. So we're generating leads, we're generating all this, greater conversion rates because we're trying to drive pipeline, we're trying to drive revenue, we're trying to drive retention, that sort of thing. And then, what we see gets left off the metric spectrum or the metric categorization with a lot of organizations is the idea of readiness metrics. So, these are the sorts of things that will measure how well you're positioned to do your more forward-facing marketing activities. So these are things like the health of the database. How are we set for the number of personas that we're chasing? How complete are those records? Those sorts of things. And so if you're good on the readiness metrics, then you're going to be able to execute on the activities really well, which are going to lead to good outputs and ultimately to your KPIs and the impact metrics that you care about. Okay. So a couple of things to close my section with. I just wanted to highlight what, in terms of operationalizing the personas, what some of the roles are, what some of the responsibilities are for the different groups. So we'll take a look at portfolio marketing and then marketing ops. So portfolio marketing, also known as product marketing in some organizations, is all about creating these personas. So they need to go through that audience exercise, figure out what the segment, the audience down to the specific buyer is, develop the persona, understand what their pains are, create that customer-centric value proposition. So the onus is really on portfolio marketing to create kind of the business view of what those personas are. And then it's on marketing ops to operationalize this stuff. We've got it in our title, marketing operations. It's part of our responsibility here. So again, it's that translation of all that qualitative data into structured data in the database. Take all those attributes, get it into the database. We need to be able to measure what we're doing, and we need to be able to do touch analysis. I showed you briefly the different content and tactic preferences. I didn't get I could talk for an hour separately on touch analysis, but there's a lot that marketing ops can do to really start to break that down, looking at different deals, comparing similar deals, and trying to understand what roles are consuming what assets at what point in the buyer's journey, and look for the different clusters so you can figure out what the secret sauce is. And then, marketing ops also owns refreshing all these algorithms. So if you've got a methodology to determining when Joe, the IT architect, is Joe, that's not a set it and forget it kind of situation, just like lead scoring. You don't create a lead scoring algorithm and turn it on and forget about it for the next 2 or 3 years. These things need to be tweaked over time. So marketing ops needs to work with portfolio marketing to understand what changes in the persona have happened, where those different thresholds are in terms of identifying the different personas, et cetera. Okay. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to turn it over to Will Spendlove, who is the VP of Marketing for InsideView. And Salesfusion and InsideView have done a great job of partnering to make a lot of these concepts that I just talked about really actionable for marketers. They bring together marketing automation and some of the data enrichment technologies that I touched on before to really make this practically useful. And so, Will, I shall turn it over to you.
Awesome, John. Thank you so much. I first of all, I just appreciate what you said. I think we at InsideView are really focused on really driving persona creation and understanding of personas. And I run the product marketing team as well as a lot of our other marketing functions. And we're super focused on leveraging your stuff specifically around the persona use. And so today, first of all, I'm really excited to be part of this Serious Decisions and Salesfusion webinar. We're InsideView. We're really dedicated to helping companies to actually create action plans around this persona, specifically around the data, including contact and company and social data. We're tied directly to both marketing ops and campaigns teams in really helping you guys to take the next steps around that persona engagement. And there's 3 key ways we really focus. Number 1, we offer key contact and company data, so that allows you to have better and more accurate lead routing. So we help you look at your current marketing databases. John talked a little bit about those marketing databases and how over the period of time they can start becoming a little bit stale. And so what we do is really help to ensure your data is accurate and ready to be used. We also help companies to build target lists based on those key persona criteria, and then you can create custom campaigns. The criteria include title and location and revenue, even criteria around leadership changes, so that as you look at those personas and you've uncovered who they are, you really want to target those personas specifically. What we do then is we give up-to-the-minute social and news insights, and so that the engagement with those personas can be relevant. An example would be, let's say you have a persona and there's a key news item that happened with that persona yesterday. We give you what that information is, so you can potentially build some really customized content through email campaigns or sales scripts, so you can really target who those personas are and what's happening in their life at that moment. And then finally, we provide key connections to those personas. So we pull together content from LinkedIn and email lists and Facebook and alumni groups, and we create this private cloud. And within that private cloud, then, you can identify who those personas are connected to, so that those engagements are much more easy to find and to build custom campaigns around. But one of the things we've really tried to do is provide our technology through API access. It's one of the areas that we're really focusing, and one of our key partners is Salesfusion. And we're currently working with them to provide them lead enrichment data through our open API access. So what I'm going to do is just turn it right over to Kate Moore, who's the Director of Revenue Marketing with Salesfusion. And Kate, I'll let you go ahead and talk about what you guys do with that.
Hey there. Thanks, Will, and thank you, John. Great great overview of the personas piece and certainly of InsideView. Really wanted to come on today to talk about practical application of what we've talked about today. Salesfusion is a full-featured marketing automation platform, and the data that comes from InsideView is a crucial piece of marketing automation. Will, I know you already said this, but we partnered with InsideView to be able to provide this feature to our customers. And actually, I'm responsible internally for our use of it, so I am sort of a customer as well. But really, the thing to keep in mind here is talking about. So there's two ways to say. Salesfusion Enrich, which is the piece of our product that leverages the InsideView Open API, is to say, okay, I have this database of contacts, and it could be years and years of data, it could be new data, it could be pieces, parts of different contacts that you have, and certainly there's holes, as we talked about today. So a part of that is saying, okay, I have this database, and I need to be able to find my personas and be able to map these people to their respective personas. So that happens, one, through really being able to enrich this data through the API with the that you already have, and then another piece of it is saying, we're all about the inbound marketing here and creating new contacts and understanding exactly where in the buy cycle a contact is. So being able to promote pieces of content to them without having to ask for a lot of information is key for people that are early on in the buying cycle. So in terms of practical application of this, is saying, I can ask for just an email address and really be able to enrich the rest of that person's information just from entering their information. So I'll show you a little bit of that now. So here you have a typical landing page. This is actually our own. First name, last name, phone, email, company. Some people may say that that's actually a lot of information, but we would like to understand, with our sales process at least, location, title. These are all important things for us to be able to map these prospects to personas. So you'll see here, if we were to ask someone to fill out that form, we'd be able to see the information that they provided to us. Amy McGuffin, we have certain information from her, but what else can we know? So here's an example. We have, title. We have more information to be able to say, okay, this person fits into this particular persona, and we can start messaging them, in regards to that persona. So that's a big piece of not only really being able to map that information and understand who these people are, but also being able to have your conversion rates on your landing pages be phenomenal. You need to be able to do that. There is a time and a place for longer forms, but with technology like this, it's not necessary anymore, which is exciting. Within Salesfusion, we have what's called a data enrichment card. So you're able to kind of go through and say, okay, this is a segment of my database, and I want to be able to know information about this lead in particular. Not only does that help a marketer to be able to map personas, but it really helps a salesperson. When this person is a sales qualified lead, they're able to have all the necessary information they need or background info to be able to call on that person and say, at least have some back knowledge to understand, this person's position in the market, who they are, potentially how their org structure works, all that. So that's an important piece of enrichment, along with really, from a marketing automation platform standpoint, being able to see your contacts and know how many you have full information for and how many you need to enrich. That definitely affects your persona. So I'm going to actually hand it over to Lynn Perry again, and we've got some questions coming in, so we'll be able to answer them shortly. Absolutely. Thank you, Kate. And we've got just time for probably about 2 questions just to get you guys out on time at 1:45. So if you don't get to your question, apologize, but we have who asked which question. We'll be sure to follow up as well. The first question would really be for John. How do you account for anonymous site visitors when it comes to personas? Does this only work if you can identify the actual person? And we run into this as well. So I'll turn that one over to you, John.
Yeah, that's a great question. So no, it doesn't only apply if you know who the person is and you have all their details. You can start to look at that anonymous behavior, and if you remember, we talked about sort of what comprises a persona. It's that firmographic information, the demographic information, but also their digital body language, essentially, so what they're doing online. So what you can do is you can certainly track that information, and if that squares with, if that helps identify who that persona is potentially without the firmographic and demographic information, then you can start to interact with them in the way that lines up with that persona. And then when they self-identify or you're able to identify who they are, now all that information is linked together. And that, by the way, that's another aspect of the forensics that marketing ops can help with, is understanding how you might be able to put those pieces together, how you can link the unknown behavior with the actual people, and then also from a larger sense, try and understand the extent to which people are doing some of those early buyer journey steps anonymously, and then when in the buyer's journey they tend to identify they identify themselves. So yeah, absolutely. You don't have to wait until you've got the full-on persona to be able to treat them like the persona that they may be. It comes down a little bit to the thresholds that you establish in terms of when you can identify who they are, but you can absolutely do it on an anonymous basis.
Okay, great, perfect. Thank you, John. And one question actually for Kate. So does the Salesfusion Enrich tool enrich companies as well as contacts?
Absolutely. So, and I apologize, I didn't mention that. So one important piece of mapping to your personas is understanding the accounts that are associated with these people. So things like company locations, average revenue per year, employee size, they're all important for your personas. So the Salesfusion Enrich feature does that as well.
Great. Thank you. With that, we'll actually wrap up the webinar. And I wanted to say, of course, thank you very much to John Donlin from Serious Decisions. If you, again, I encourage you to look them up. They've been a great partner for us, and I know InsideView as well, and a lot more content, obviously, than you've seen here, but great advice and great content. And thank you again very much to Will Spenlove from InsideView and Kate Moore from our team here at Salesfusion. We are going to send out follow-ups probably this afternoon at the latest, but we'll have a recording of this presentation on YouTube as well as the presentation itself. So if you'd like to review any part of it or share it with anybody else, you'll have access to those as well. And with that, we'll just thank you for your time and hope everybody has a great rest of the day. Thank you.